In the US, the Hands Across America charity event saw an estimated 6 million people hold hands for 15 minutes in an attempt to form an unbroken chain across the country from New York to Long Beach, accompanied by the kind of earnestly cheesy song that only a mid-80s US charity record could achieve. Practicalities meant that a physically unbroken chain couldn't be maintained, but participation within urban areas was such that, if evened out, the line would indeed have been continuous. The event aimed to raise awareness and money for the fight against poverty, hunger and homelessness, and in all raised some $34 million, though the New York Times would later report that only $15 million of that was distributed, the rest being swallowed by operational costs. CIA intelligence analyst Jonathan Pollard was convicted of espionage for selling US military secrets to Israel, acting, as he said, in the belief that the US was unjustly withholding vital information from an embattled ally. His prison term expired in 2015, and following the end of his parole in 2020, he moved to Jerusalem. He remains the only American ever to receive a life sentence for passing intelligence to an allied country. Kurt Waldheim was elected president of Austria despite controversy surrounding his alleged involvement in World War II war crimes. The way the allegations had surfaced just before the election led many to suspect a political smear campaign by the US government, which sparked a defiant mood in the small neutral country. In the following days and weeks, the US government, followed by almost every other government in the world, declared Waldheim persona non grata, meaning that he would be unable to visit any foreign countries during his term as head of state, turning Austria into an international pariah. And in Mexico, the FIFA World Cup kicked off, with defending champions Italy drawing 1-1 with underdogs Bulgaria. Making their World Cup debuts were Canada, Iraq and Denmark. Mexico had stepped in at a late stage to host the tournament after Colombia had pulled out due to financial reasons, and preparations had been affected by the Mexico City earthquake earlier in the year, so some aspects of the organisation were a little chaotic, but on the pitch there was plenty to enjoy. Italy scraped through their group, hosts Mexico likewise making heavy weather of defeating Iraq 1-0 in the final game, while European champions France swept through without too much trouble. Both Iraq and Canada went out without winning a game, though neither took an absolute thrashing, but the third debutant, Denmark, wowed spectators by winning all 3 games in a tough group with West Germany, Uruguay and Scotland, including a 6-1 drubbing of the South Americans. Northern Ireland were drawn with Spain, who they'd famously beaten in 1982, but lightning couldn't strike twice and the Ulstermen went out. For a while, it looked like all 3 British teams would be home early, as England lost to Portugal, whose players were on training strike, and then drew 0-0 with Morocco, but young striker Gary Lineker spared their blushes by putting 3 past 1982 semi-finalist Poland to put them in the next round. And as the Formula One teams arrived in Montreal, it was to news of yet another fatal accident. At the Hessen Rally, Mark Seurer's Ford RS2000 left the track, hit a tree, and the composite-panelled car quickly caught fire. Seurer was seriously injured, and his co-driver and friend Michael Wieder was killed. It was the latest in a series of fatal accidents in Group B rally, already under fire after the deaths of several spectators at the Portuguese rally, and driver Henry Toivonen and his co-driver Sergio Cresto at the Tour de Corse. Group B had been instituted only in 1982 as the top category of rally cars, with relatively little regulation on car design and engine size, with the result being some of the fastest rally cars ever produced, but the huge increase in power hadn't been tempered by a change in safety standards or crowd control. Even before the 1986 season's multiple fatal accidents, many were calling at least for reform. Now, it was widely expected that the upcoming FIA extraordinary meeting in June would announce drastic changes to, or even the end of, the Group B format. Arrows signed up Christian Danner as a replacement for Mark Seurer, but his contract couldn't be broken until the next race, allowing Ozella to find a replacement, so Arrows would be down to 1 car for the Canadian Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Derek Warwick joined the Brabham team, as previously announced, to replace Helio De Angelis. Derek Warwick must have been kicking himself for turning down the opportunity to replace Jacques Lafitte at Williams in favour of remaining loyal to the Renault team. He endured a frustrating season that ended in unemployment, while Nigel Mansell, who took the Williams drive in his stead, had won 3 races already. Warwick had been wanted by Lotus for 1986, which would have been another potential winning move, but had been vetoed by Senna. However, he seemed happy enough in his silk-cut Jaguar, with teammate and fellow F1 refugee Eddie Cheever, but a call from Bernie Eccleston saw him back in the paddock. Like at Imola, there were gloomy predictions of another dull economy run thanks to the fuel-thirsty nature of the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, which would in turn make practice and qualifying extra important, particularly as, just with Monaco and Spa, it's a temporary circuit which teams can't test at beforehand. All of which added up to a slew of accidents over the 2 days, with Teo Fabi having a spectacular spin into the pit wall, resulting in everyone on it falling off, and the Brabham pitboard being destroyed before it could be pulled out of the way. Once the dust and bits of carbon fibre had settled, Nigel Mansell had his first pole of the year, with the usual suspects Senna, Piquet and Prost making up the top 4. The Ligiers continued their impressive form in 5th, Arnoux, and 8th, Lafitte, bracketing Rosberg's McLaren and Berger's Benetton. The Brabhams made up row 5, Warwick a very commendable 10th on his return to the cockpit, the Ferraris all at sea 11th, Alboreto, and 16th, Johansson. The Minardi team seemed also to be making some progress, outqualifying the Zakspeeds and Dezellas at the back of the 25-car grid. Race day dawned sunny, but the perennially unlucky Patrick Tambay had a nasty off in the morning warm-up that damaged his feet and kept him out of the race, so it was 24 cars that lined up on Sunday afternoon. Didier Pironi was also in Canada, commentating for French TV but looking fit, walking unaided, and talking about a possible F1 comeback, with some suggesting him as a potential replacement for Jacques Lafitte at Ligier should the veteran decide as expected to retire at the end of 1986. The lights went green on the race, with Mansell and Senna holding their positions at the front and Prost nipping ahead of Piquet into 3rd, while Arnoux and Rosberg were scrapping hard over 5th. Almost immediately Mansell began to pull out a lead, while Senna seemed to be holding up Prost, followed by Piquet, Rosberg, Arnoux and Berger. Prost was all over Senna, while behind him on lap 3 Rosberg got past Piquet, tucked himself up under his teammate's rear wing, close enough to nearly run into the back of him when the Frenchman bailed out of one move, and then forced his way through at the next corner. After bumping across the curbs, Senna lost momentum and Rosberg, Piquet and Arnoux quickly followed through. In the meantime, Mansell had pulled out a lead of several seconds over the McLarens, with Piquet still in touch behind them, and then Arnoux and Senna another few seconds behind him. Alan Jones came in for an early and distinctly leisurely pit stop, and Rosberg started attacking Prost for second place as they swarmed past the Australian once he was back on the track. Patrese had a spin and nearly collected his new teammate Warwick while recovering, and a few laps later at the same spot, Rosberg nipped inside Prost to take second as they were both lapping De Cesaris. Keke lost no time in pulling away from his teammate and chasing after Mansell, while further back, Ayrton Senna had pulled exactly the same move on Arnoux as they both lapped Jones. Mansell was being held up by Jonathan Palmer's Zakspeed, allowing Rosberg to close right up behind him. Once clear, though, Mansell was able to pull away a bit again. Rothengatter and the other Zakspeed gave them considerably less trouble, but the net effect was that the top 3 were now much closer together. On lap 16, Rosberg passed Mansell for the lead on the run down to the hairpin, apparently catching his old teammate unawares, and before he knew it, Nigel was under attack from Prost, instead as Rosberg began to pull away a lead. The 3-lap Nannini, whose turbocharger chose that moment to give up the ghost, the young Italian joining Teo Fabi and Christian Danner on the sidelines. Further back, Arnoux had dropped back from Senna, and the Ligier was now under attack from his old ride Ferrari number 28, with Stefan Johansson at the wheel. Rosberg came up to lap Jones at an awkward place, and although the veteran Aussie tried to get out of the way, it gave Mansell an opening which he took, squeezing through between the McLaren and the Haas Lola to retake the lead, and the top 3 were now once more running nose to tail, as Warwick's Brabham debut ended after 20 laps with a BMW engine failure. Further back, another 3-way battle was underway, with Arnoux holding off Johansson and Alboreto for the last point. Prost dropped off Mansell and Rosberg once more, electing to conserve fuel and await developments. The next one of those was on lap 28 of 69 when, as Mansell approached a group of backmarkers, Rosberg peeled into the pits for a tyre change, a slow 13.24 second stop. Mansell was in next time round, and his was quicker, putting him back out ahead of the Finn. Johnny Dumfries had stopped on the same lap as Rosberg, and on his out lap had been tripped over by Johansson off camera, which put both drivers out, and then it was Prost's turn to make his own tyre stop, but a sticking wheel nut saw him stationary nearly 20 seconds and rejoining 5th. All of which put Mansell back in the lead, with Rosberg 3rd, and Piquet, who hadn't stopped, 2nd. The Brazilian had had a quiet race so far, ploughing a lonely furrow some distance behind the top 3, and as a result his tyres were in better shape, and he was able to stay out for lap after lap after the others had all made their stops. When he eventually did come in, an excellent stop put him back on track 4th, So after the stops, the top four were exactly as they had been: Mansell, Rosberg, Prost and Piquet, with Arnoux and Senna 5th and 6th having swapped places. As the race entered its second half, what on-track action there had been rather fizzled out as everyone kept an eye on their fuel gauges. Piquet was slowly reeling in Prost, and Senna was looking for a way past Arnoux, but the Ligier driver was as difficult to pass as ever, and so the primary interest was in the relatively light trickle of retirements, with Berger disappearing with turbo troubles on lap 35, Boutsen's electrics giving up on lap 39, De Cesaris and Ghinzani both having gearbox troubles on lap 41 and 44 respectively, and Patresi's turbo going on lap 45. Eventually, Piquet had caught up to Prost, and on lap 46 he took the place with little fuss and headed off in pursuit of Rosberg and second. The Finn was slowing, and soon both Piquet and Prost were close behind, while Senna was having Ligier trouble. Lafitte had made a long tyre stop and had emerged just behind the Arnoux-Senna battle, and now unlapped himself from the Brazilian, who was still trying to find a way past the other blue car. Piquet passed Rosberg at the hairpin, and the cameras blacked out for a second from sheer excitement, and before the end of the lap Prost was past his ailing teammate too. Unfortunately, Piquet's charge had wrecked his tyres, and with 13 laps to go, he was forced to pit for new rears. Meanwhile, Mansell lapped Senna and Arnoux, and the Brazilian took advantage to also bully his way past de Ligier to retake 5th. Piquet had returned to the track behind Rosberg, but on fresh tyres it was no trouble for him to retake 3rd, and that was where they finished. Nigel Mansell lapped metronomically to take his second win of the season in his 80th Grand Prix in commanding form, with Prost and Piquet joining him on the podium, and Rosberg, who ran out of fuel on the slowing down lap, 4th. Senna and Arnoux took the rest of the points. The top 6 on the grid had run in the top 6 positions for basically the entire race and had finished as the top 6. Of the rest, Lafitte had taken 7th off Alboreto in the dying laps, the Tyrrell's sandwiched Jones, clocking his second finish of the year in the Haas Lola, and Rothengatter was still running 6 laps down at the end. So now Prost retook the lead of the championship from Senna, who now shared second place with Mansell, who rolled into the Parc Fermé running on fumes. The teams packed up for the short trip to Detroit for the other half of the North American Tour next weekend, but talk was once more about the fuel limits after another, frankly rather dull race. After Detroit, the FIA would meet and, it was hoped, do something to alleviate the problem alongside whatever safety measures would be introduced in the wake of Elio De Angelis' death.